Hello everyone, I'm back for another update here. I'm currently out on a walk um, from my house on this road. As you can see, the leaves are starting to show some color here. We did get some rain showers earlier. For now, they've moved on. So what I'm going to talk about today is there has been a slight uptick in activity in tropical systems. We did get 2 typhoons in the Pacific recently. One hit the Philippines, the other one curved out east of Japan. I said in my last video that the Pacific, I don't believe, has crossed that threshold where storms are not going to develop anymore that I've been talking about. We did get those 2 typhoons, which once they manufacture a storm, the reason why so many storms go to Cat 4, Cat 5, or super typhoons is because they keep feeding energy into it. Once the motor gets going, it's like stepping on the accelerator and flooring it. And I don't know exactly what kind of energy is being used, but it's more than just mere cloud seeding. I saw a recent post by Jennifer Morahansi, mentioned in past videos. And unfortunately, she has stopped doing Zoom calls where anybody can come in and comment. I don't know why she stopped that. I still do get posts and emails. And she posted that she does agree that cloud seeding is going on, but cloud seeding, technology I'm talking about is on a much bigger scale than just seeding clouds. I feel they are using technology from outer space, satellites, to try to create hurricanes. Again, I keep repeating, how do they do this? Some sort of infrared energy from satellites is used, either from sunlight or other means. I don't fully understand, but I can just look at the evidence of what the images are showing, how these systems do evolve. Like Gabriel, I mentioned in my last video, was just a cluster of thunderstorms, and it was when I put out my last video. But then when it got to within a couple hundred miles of Bermuda, it suddenly took off. The motor got going, and I did hint that in the last video that they might get lucky and get a system going out of Gabriel if it hit a patch of warm water. Apparently it did. But what's not talked about with Gabriel is how long it took for it to get going into something. I had been watching that system since it got off Africa. They were trying and trying and trying to get this thing turned into something, and it failed. Until the system made it all the way across the Atlantic, almost to Bermuda. And finally, some mechanism, the storm got going, the motor started. And of course, once the motor starts, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, you keep feeding energy into the system, it shoots up, and a sudden intensification occurs, and it reaches Cat 4, Cat 5 status all of a sudden. It's because of this technology, mainly, that this sudden intensification, it's like flooring a car. You floor it, you press the accelerator to floor it, It rapidly accelerates. That's what this technology does. Once the motor gets going on the storm, it starts spinning. It starts drawing the heat energy up from the ocean more and more through this mechanism. There's a threshold that the storm crosses where it suddenly explodes into development. And this technology takes advantage of that. It pushes a system over that threshold. It gets explosive development going with it, or enhances it. That's my explanation as to why every system lately seems to all of a sudden get up to Cat 4 once it gets going. It's not global warming, it's technology that's causing it. It's not warmer oceans, it's not any of this. This technology I'm talking about, you could create a storm if the water's even less than 28C. They say the water has to be at least 28C for a tropical system to get going. Well, I feel that once the system gets going, if it hits a patch of warmer water and they really fire it up, the water temperature doesn't have to be that warm to keep it going. There's still energy in that water to sustain it once it gets going. That's what happened with Gabrielle. And I'm not denying it could have been a Cat 4. The images looked impressive on it once it got going. But it's gone now. And the thing I noticed about this morning, when I looked, they still were counting it as a hurricane. And on the images, it looked like it was completely sheared apart by this morning. They were lying. There was no hurricane this morning anymore. They said there was a hurricane. On the National Weather Service website, said they were still calling it a hurricane. I looked at the image. It was gone. There was no Gabrielle this morning. Why is this happening? Because the longer they could get away with counting these systems as hurricanes, it counts as another day in the record of there being a hurricane. It makes the season appear more active than it really has been. Through the ACE total, which is accumulated cyclone energy, they tally that up every season, and every time they count a system like this, it increases those numbers. And makes the season look deceptively more active than it really has been. Although even despite their methods, we're still 50% below average on the ACE, even in the Atlantic for the season so far, even after Gabrielle. Give you an idea how inactive the season has been. Is why I've been saying a no-show season. However, now currently there's two other depressions. One they've already named, starts with an H, Humberto, and the other one is near Puerto Rico. They're bombing these two systems with this technology. So far they haven't really totally gotten either one of them going yet, but it's possible they could. There are patches of warmer water out there. I mean, the whole entire ocean is not below the threshold I'm talking about, though I feel that the eastern Atlantic is, because they have not been able to get anything going east of Puerto Rico this year. I feel that the threshold, though, for natural storm development has been crossed. Almost globally. I mean, but they're coming up with more satellites up there. Who knows what they're doing? There is technology being used, as I said a little while ago, that goes way beyond just seeding clouds. this is a lot more involving satellites, involving energy being beamed down that is top secret stuff. How do I know this? Because I could see evidence of it in the images. They're using some sort of laser beam energy pulses or technology. Because there has been a long-term decrease in hurricanes. It doesn't fit their narrative of global warming. There's billions of dollars tied up in the global warming narrative. They don't want people to realize that warming and cooling occur naturally. They want people to feel that man is at fault and that we're on a death spiral upward of temperatures that's never going to end until they shut the world down, basically. Excuse me. So, what does that mean? I'm out here with this channel to prove to you with the truth that man is not causing climate change. It is natural. It is due to variations in solar output that happen over longer periods of time. We do not have enough of a history of solar activity under our belts to know what the sun can and can't do. We only have about a couple centuries of observations, which is not really enough to form a conclusion that the sun doesn't affect climate. The only clue we have is the Maunder minimum, which coincided with a period of much colder temperatures in the northern hemisphere. We have the medieval warm period, but detailed records of solar activity were not kept back then, at least to our knowledge. We only have clues. But the medieval warm period was much warmer than present, and there were periods prior to that that were even warmer. That's why I embrace what Ruth Wetzel, I've gone into detail more on his take on climate in previous videos, but it's related to the sun, and it's a long-term cycle where the sun, for 1/10 of its 100,000 years, has more activity, the other 90,000 years less overall activity. There's a cycle that's 100,000 years, and we're nearing the end of a 10,000 year period of greater solar activity that's about to drop off at some point in the future, not too distant future. Ruth Wetzel felt it was going to be solar cycle 25, but apparently he did admit his time frame could be off, but he was feeling it could be 25. Well, 25 is we did get a cycle. So he's off on his timing of his predictions. But he bases his predictions on what's been found in the Greenland ice cores of the carbon-14 variations, the isotope variations, which indicate over time changes in solar output which affect these parameters, these levels of carbon-14 vary significantly. Which is why Jennifer Morency lost my respect, because she claimed to me, and I've touched on this in the past, that the records don't indicate any significant enough variations. Well, Ruth Wetzel showed very clearly in his, excuse me again, in his presentations, that there were significant variations that could account for ice ages and warmer periods in the past. He shows it very clearly in his presentations what they came up with. And that's why Jennifer Morency lost my respect when she told me that, which was bunk. It's not true. As I've said, we're potentially on the precipice of a massive change in climate. But it's not going to be what people think. It's not going to be caused by man. What I mean on the precipice is it could still be a century away. It could be the next solar cycle. It could be a couple of 100 years. Even several hundred. But the bottom line is 10,000 years of elevated solar activity out of the 100,000 year cycle is about to end at some point. We have fulfilled the 10,000 years of higher activity levels. We're at the very tail end of that period right now, is what the bottom line is. Man is not going to be able to arrest anything if the sun shuts down and goes into a shutdown mode. Man will not be able to affect the outcome of that at all. Getting back more to the present. I saw a post today where a meteorologist claimed that he admitted that there's been a long-term decline. But he belittled people that feel that that's a symptom of that global warming isn't really going on like they're claiming. That warmer oceans don't necessarily lead to more storms. He tried to say that it's because the atmosphere is more stable in the tropics, and the subtropical high, or they're technically called Hadley cells, have gotten stronger, bigger in recent years. Well, I've been touching on this in my videos. If the Hadley cells are subtropical high pressures, which form the latitude of about Jacksonville, Florida normally, on average, and encircle that latitude of the globe, both north and south, if that was really true, and the Hadley cells were further north, bigger than in the last few years, then where are the heat waves that would come in connection with it? Where is all the hot weather that would come to the Great Plains? Because if the high is further north than usual, like it happened in the 30s, we would be getting heat wave after heat wave during the summer, because that high would be sitting over land more. We would be getting a lot more hurricanes. This meteorologist claimed that hurricanes are stalling because instead of moving on because this high is stronger. Well, it's the opposite the case. If the high was stronger, the winds would be stronger around the periphery of these highs. The storms would be moving and would not be stalling. They'd be moving pretty quickly. The movement would be less erratic because the high pressure would be steering it a lot more strongly. A weaker Hadley cell, on the other hand, would cause the storms to move more erratically a weaker subtropical high would cause more erratic movement of these systems because the steering winds around the periphery would not be as strong. And he also gave the excuse that I mentioned in my last video that the intertropical convergence zone is too far north, the waters are too cold at that latitude. When they come off Africa, the systems die out. You know, there's one example. They don't want to admit that the whole global warming hypothesis is wrong. It's not it was not caused by man, and that actually in the last decade or so the trend has reversed. We are not warming anymore. They don't want to admit that or accept that. It's a religion. Global warming is a religion. It's like a religion. They don't want to accept evidence that points in the other direction. And then when things do happen, such as a decrease in the last 20 years in general, and hurricane activity, they try to explain it away, making up excuses, rather than accepting that this is a symptom. The globe is no longer warming like it was. They don't take the facts and draw the conclusion from it that they should draw. Instead, they make up excuses to explain away why we're not getting more hurricanes anymore, for example. Why the bottom line is, we're not getting as many hurricanes. It means there's global cooling going on. We're not warming anymore. That's the bottom line. It's kindergartner. It's not rocket science. You gotta have heat for hurricanes. You're not getting them anymore. It means you're not warming anymore. You're cooling. It's very simple, but people that have been brainwashed, even meteorologists, there's a lot of meteorologists that have been brainwashed into believing this global warming by man. That nothing else affects climate, nothing else overrides that. Nothing else could change the climate other than just man and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. That people are convinced. I don't even comment on this meteorologist post anymore because I know that he would belittle me or even ban me if I told him how I really felt on there. I just look at his information, and because he does put out good forecasts. I even met him in person once. But sometimes you just have to zip your lips with people like that. You're wasting your breath if you try to convince them otherwise, because they're brainwashed. They're thoroughly convinced that the climate is going a certain way. And there's no way you're going to talk them out otherwise. They're going to call you stupid and claim you don't know what you're talking about, and on and on and on. I don't engage with people like that. But I got this channel because I am doing my best to put the truth out there as to what to prepare for, where the climate is going to go in the near and long-term future. Yeah, I can't predict it either totally, but I have a lot of knowledge to share. That's going to be it for this video. We have to see what these next two systems do. I can't guarantee they're not going to develop into anything. Like I say, I didn't think Gabrielle was going to develop either, and it did finally. But it had to go across the whole ocean before it did, and that tells me is, for the most part, the energy in the Atlantic is lacking. For systems, it's still lacking. These other two systems still have not really developed. Yeah, they named Humberto. It's a minimal tropical storm right now. Has been. The other one's near Puerto Rico. And another thing I wanted to mention is They're manipulating the MJO to make the pattern favorable. How they're doing this, they enhance the convection through similar technologies. They enhance hurricanes in certain parts of the world. And this causes the jet stream to take a certain configuration. What they're doing right now is a phase 1, 4, 5, 6 combination. So phase 1 would put a trough in the east, but phase 4, 5, and 6 would put a ridge. So what does that lead to? It leads to a cutoff low situation, or a situation where you get a very weak trough in the east, but it's still warm in the country as a whole, but you got a weak trough in the east to draw the storm in if they can get one going. That's what happened last year with Helene. That we had a weak cutoff low or cutoff over Kentucky, and that drew Helene northward and drew the moisture to the west to where North Carolina got hit. If it wasn't for that cutoff low, Helene wouldn't have happened the way it did. Now they're trying to replicate this pattern again. I see it a cutoff low over somewhere over the southeast, and you got tropical systems off the southeast coast. This is the only way they could get a landfall right now with this pattern. Because in general, the U.S. is protected because the subtropical high, as I mentioned, is weaker and further south. Contrary to what this meteorologist claims, he's wrong. So this is going to be it. I'll be back with another update. Let's see what these two systems actually